Our next speaker is Natalia Moussienko. She is a leading research fellow in the Modern Art Research Institute of the National Academy of Art in Ukraine. And she is the author of numerous books and articles on art history, cultural diplomacy, cinema, and urbanism, including The Art of Maidan, which were published in 2015, Kiev Art Space, and Arts and Politics. Natalia Moussienko is a board head of Ukrainian Fulbright Circle, Fulbright Art and Alumni Association. Moussienko is also an initiator and organizer of the 5 cultural diplomacy forums in Kiev. Central to the project is an Art of Maidan book, which its English and German translation and exhibition that have already been displayed in 18 locations in Ukraine, United States, United Kingdom, and Netherlands. So her presentation, an individual and art in contemporary Ukrainian art. And wow, sorry, sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here, and thank you so much, Dr. Andrzejczyk and Dr. Shevchuk, for inviting me to take part in this conference. It's a great honor. Donbass War and its artistic representation are significant for the global picturing of art in war, and very important for studying philosophy, art theory, sociology, historic, political science. It could be analyzed through the various methodological frameworks. For example, Art and War, published in 2006 by Laura Brandon, suggests the following methodological issues: what war art is, its long history, war art and propaganda, war art as a memorial and as a memory. The research reveals the artist's responses to the First and Second World Wars, Vietnam Wars, and other conflicts. Recent research by Joanna Burke, War and Art, A Visual History of Modern Conflict, shows the artistic representation of war during the last 2 centuries, from the Crimean War through the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. This survey demonstrates how artistic portrayal of war has changed from a celebration of heroic achievements to more trustful illustration. An obvious challenge for our analysis is the absence of time distance for examining the artistic presentation in Donbass War, and of course its hybrid character. And however, a 5-year period has already given a birth to enormous artistic creativity, which is the focal point of this fantastic conference, very important conference. Focusing on civilization process, especially in their crisis stages like wars, have always been the central concern for scholars. Studies of social fractures and new cultural paradigms require particular responsibility from the researchers conducting their surveys in the thick of events. Today, it is a challenge for Ukrainian scholars who collect diverse empiric data on Donbass War and analyze them rationally, while emotionally they experience every moment of their country's difficult wartime. Focusing on an individual and war and contemporary Ukrainian art may be prolific in the following aspects. Ukrainian art from Maidan to Donbass War. War through the lens of personal stories. Artists from and in the occupied territories. and Ukrainian cinema in the context of the Donbass war. And actually, all these important questions already have been presented during our two-day conference. I would like to point the very important issue from Maidan to war in Donbass. The Maidan in Kiev was a scene of complex collective artistic expression filled with emotion and creativity. This expression was powerful in form and diverse in content. It was radical and political, philosophical and poetical, and deeply aesthetics. It was a great explosion of all forms and genres of art: performance, installations, poster art, photography, sculpture, painting, music, literature, etc. For Ukrainians, the cultural and performative dimensions of the Maidan marked a critical pivot from all the Soviet paradigms. New narratives entered Ukrainian art discourse, ranging from call for Euro integration to social mobilization for civil rights, and later the battle for the motherland, which was highlighted by the many artists. Those who participated in the Maidan went to war. And premonition of the war in the art of Maidan is really very visual. And I would like to call your attention to the travel exhibit, Art of Maidan, that presents to public 17 Ukrainian artists. You can see their names listed. All these 17 artists participated in events on the Maidan 2013-2014 in Kiev. They work in different mediums. And since 2014, this show has been already displayed in 18 locations, and the Ukrainian Museum in New York hosted the show in February-June 2017. And I just take only one show, not only because I'm a creator and initiator of this show, but first of all, just to have such a frame of, if you want, small frame, and to show you how the works made several years ago, made during Maidan, can be read it now, can be seen now in the framework of the war. One of the emblematic works of this show is Arkan by Marian Lunev. Author depicts a ritual dance initiation of warrior. And the artist goes from his Maidan work of 2014 to the large-scale philosophical series of reflections on war heroes in 2018 and later. And you see how he started his work in January 2014, and now this series, he continues to work on his series. I would like to show you the works now that actually were done in the January and February of 2014, just days, months before war. Anton Hauk, Gleb Vysheslavsky, Trade Unions. This is Gleb Vysheslavsky, it is his assemblage. He took the things, he was all the artists were active Maidan participants, so Gleb took the things from Maidan and made his assemblage. Very famous artist, Andrei Yermolenko, the voice of the people is the voice of God. Artist, photo artist Nick Zavlinsky, Euromaidan. Irena Khovanets, white bird, gray bird, black bird, the last days of the February 2014. Roman Mikhailuk, photo artist, the day after the Maidan tragedy. Maria Pavlenko, people of the Maidan, soldiers of the Maidan. Also, it was also January, February. Margaret Macmillan, the author of the research, The War That Ended Peace, argues, if the artists foresaw the Great War, she noted, we have the statistics from the Great War, so many killed and so many wounded, the list of battles, the towns and cities destroyed, the countryside poisoned and flowed, the resources expanded, but they are too big to comprehend. And how do we make sense of the 4 years of fighting, the imperfect peace, and the dreadful legacy left for the 20th century? Historians can tell part of the story, but what did the war mean for those who were part of it? And what did it mean for European civilization? We need artists to help us answer those questions. Actually, Professor Macmillan wrote it about the Great War, but how it's true as when we are speaking about the Donbass war. Seeking for the answer to the complex questions, both artists and scholars often turn to personal stories. And when Dr. Shevchuk invited me to speak at this conference, my first reflection was about my family members, of my family members who practiced art during World War II, as well about the early cinema study of Dr. Oksana Moussienko, my mother, professor of cinema history and theory. The image of the defender of the motherland on the screen. I remember this book from my school years, but for me it was always a book about past. And now this book is a book about our life. This book was published in 1975. It analyzes Ukrainian film featuring the events of the World War II. More precisely, it explores the great patriotic war discourse in terms of Soviet historiography. Heroes of the films were of the same age and often friends of my grandfather, a filmmaker and journalist, Stanislav Vyshinsky, who fought in that war. And as a Soviet officer, he had pushed his way from Kiev to Stalingrad and eventually to Berlin. Natalia Kandyba, an actress of Kiev Franco Theatre, my grandmother, stayed in Kiev when her husband went to the front. During the war, she was performing in the Taras Shevchenko Bila Tserkva Mobile Theatre at the occupied by Nazi territories of Ukraine. After the liberation of Kiev, she became a member of Front Concert Brigade and then of Front Theatre. Artists at both issues, artists on the occupied territories and artists at the front lines, are very challenging in the context of the Donbass war. They need careful examination and reflection. Lack of attention to these issues, as well as its oversimplified solution, can ruin people's lives. After all, the label put on people for staying and working in the occupied territories, especially of those working in cultural sphere theaters, has destroyed lives of many artists. But now I would like to give an example of another artist from Donbass, speaking about filmmaker Leonid Lukov, originally from Mariupol. And he made his first feature film about Donbass Love in 1936. And majority of his works were devoted to Donbass. After the war, Second World War, he made film devoted to restoration of Donbass, the Maidan of Donetsk, 1952. He was called Ukrainian Michael Curtis. In 1933, while living in evacuation, he made one of his most famous films, Two Soldiers. Michael Curtis' Casablanca was released at the same time in the end of 1942. Both films are about person, about individual during the war. Two Soldiers is a legendary film, war film about the front friendship of Arkady Dubin, a carefree guy from Odessa, and amusing and kind Sasha Sventsov. Two Soldiers was the first film to claim the common truth. Not only do they fight in war, they live in war. And the films shot during World War II are particularly important for comparative analysis of these films and the movies made during the Donbass War, as the absence of the time distance affects greatly artistic reflections. Before coming here, I spoke to Filip Ilyenko, who was during 5 years ahead of the Ukrainian State Film Agency. And I asked him, can we calculate how many films about war appeared during these last 5 years? And he gave me the general figures, the production, the Ukrainian feature films production, that from 2014 to 2019, 110 Ukrainian feature films were released. 173 films were shot, 67 feature films, 24 short fiction films, 23 animated feature films, 56 non-fiction films, and 3 chronicles. And very important that state funding of Ukrainian cinema has also increased. But he told me, I can't tell you, I even don't know how to calculate the films about war done in Ukraine for the last 5 years, because there are films about war, there are films about how war affected the lives of people, there are films, the different kind of war, war effects presented in the films. And so I decided to propose another framework. As a former member of the Ukrainian Oscar Committee from 2016 to 2018, I decided to focus on the representation of Donbass War in film submitted to the Academy Award for Best International Feature Film and selected participants. We decided with Filip that, it would be a good idea to speak about it in America. So, in 2014, according to the official Academy Awards rules, only film released in Ukraine between October 1st, 2013 and September 30, 2014 could be submitted to the committee. That is why movies featuring the war in Donbass could not take part in the competition yet. In 2015, there was no submission from Ukraine due to controversy over the Ukrainian Oscar Committee composition. And we can really start from 2016. The Ukrainian Oscar Commission submission in 2016, 3 films in competition, One deals with war in Donbass. It's a film Ukrainian Sheriffs, directed by Roman Bondarchuk, and it was selected as Ukrainian entry for the best foreign language film at the 89th Academy Awards. And this film shows how war influences people living far from the front lines. The Ukrainian Oscar Committee submission in 2017, 8 films. One deal directly with Donbass war and one with the World War II. So submitted was a film Black Label by Valentin Vasanovich. War of Chimeras, directed by Anastasia Starozhitska and Maria Starozhitska, mother and daughter. The story of war, love, and death that was documented by the direct participants of the events. And necessary to stress, to point out that both directors, mother and daughters, they are very active in promotion of this film, of this story everywhere in Ukraine. And we spoke about the film, also war film, but about the Second War the Second, directed 87 children, directed by Akhtem Seytablayev. Were about the Nazi-occupied Crimea in 1944. Already discussed it yesterday with Yuri Shevchuk. The Ukrainian Oscar Committee submission in 2018, 6 film and competitions, and 3 of them are about the Donbass war. Submitted Donbass, international co-produced drama directed by Sergei Loznitsa, and among these 3, Cyborgs, Heroes Never Died. Also, we discussed it yesterday, this film, and a film that I think we didn't mention yet, Myth, a documentary film made by Leonid Kantor. I like this film very much. The film depicts the life of Ukrainian Vasil Slepak, a world-famous opera singer from the Parisian National Opera who left the big stage to become a warrior. And he sacrificed his life defending Ukraine in the Russian-Ukrainian war in Donbass. As I think probably you know, the destiny is both the hero of the film, Vasil Slepak, and both the director of the film, Leonid Kantor, have tragic destinies. And finally, this year, we also already have discussed this film, the Ukrainian Oscar Committee submission, only one film in competition, Homeward by Nariman Aliyev. And I was really surprised, why one film? So, and I called to director, president of the Ukrainian Oscar Committee, Alek Shpiluk, and I asked, Alek, why other directors didn't submit their films? And well, it's an interesting answer. He told me that this fact could be regarded as a clear message from the Ukrainian cinema community, signifying the leadership of this film. So I asked Alek, can I do this statement official, your statement? Yes, it's we think that it is really the fact that other films, well, there are different ways of thinking and presentation of films, but he presented this like a message from the Ukrainian cinema community, what is really interesting from my point of view. So, from 2016 to 2019, the Ukrainian Oscar Committee considered 18 nominees for Academy Award for the Best International Film. 6 films, 1/3, were about Donbass War and its aftermath and impact on society. 3 of 6 films have been submitted for the Academy in 16, 18, 19. In 2017 was one exception, the movie Black Label by Vasanovich. But 2020 may give us a chance, as Vasanovich is going to submit to the committee his film Atlantis, which has won an award in Venice and a lot of other awards already. This is his artistic premonition of how the war ended and Ukraine regained its Donbass. And hopefully, this is also a premonition of the Oscar Award for Ukrainian film, and of course, of the end of the war as well. I would like to end with some reflections instead of conclusions, because it's absolutely open topic. The war in Donbass has entered into all kinds of Ukrainian art and impregnated them with new narratives. Personal stories from the trenches, not by the generals, are of fundamental importance for understanding this war. They help to find right artistic approach and prevent declarative ceremonial pathos. Studying the works of artists living in the occupied territories and at the front lines is rather efficient. And it's important to analyze the artistic reflection of the Donbass war in historical and cultural context, and in particular by reinterpretation the artistic heroics of World War II. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation.